Youth homelessness can be defined as people aged 12 to 18 who have inadequate or temporary accommodation. Temporary accommodation can include in a squat, in an abandoned building, with friends, in a boarding house, in other assisted accommodation, or in a caravan. According to Mackenzie and Chamberlain 2008, there are certain groups within our society that are at more risk than others. These groups include alternative family types. This includes blended or single-parent family. This group represents 67% of students that are homeless. Another vulnerable group within our society are the Indigenous population. The rate of youth homelessness in Indigenous people is 487 per 10,000 compared to 49 in non-Indigenous people. Another vulnerable group within our society are youth that are from state care and protection. Many of the students that are homeless in the study conducted by Mackenzie and Chamberlain 2008 were in state care and protection. Homelessness Australia 2013 note that as many as 40% of young people discharged from statutory care experience homelessness within the first 12 months. There are a variety of statistics that support the high rates of homeless youth. Some statistics are as follows. 1 in 6 Australians aged 15 to 24 are living in poverty. Many young people are unemployed, which significantly affects the likelihood of homelessness. Young women aged 15 to 24 have the highest rate of assistance from specialist homelessness services. The main contributing factor to this is domestic violence and sexual assault. Homelessness Australia state that 1 in 42 young women needed help within the years 2011 to 2012. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, finding reliable data on youth homelessness is difficult, as many are not stated in the census. This is due to a variety of factors, including youth not being present in a household when the census is being conducted, residents not knowing that youth is unable to return home, youth not participating in the census. Although the Australian Bureau of Statistics cannot conclude the exact numbers of youth homelessness, they are continually trying to create the most precise estimations they can with a variety of research methods. These methods include a study to try and get a representation of homeless youth in schools. This study conducted was in partnership with the Australian government and many other key contributors in finding the most accurate statistics possible. The findings of this study are as followed. There were 9,389 homeless school students in Census Week 2006 using the service delivery definition compared with 12,227 in 2001. Student homelessness has decreased overall. The rate of homelessness decreased from 10 homeless school students per 1,000 of the school population in 2001 to 7 homeless school students per 1,000 in 2006. The number of homeless youth decreased from 26,060 in Census Week 2001 using the cultural definition to 21,940 in 2006. The number of homeless youth decreased in all states and territories except for Western Australia, where there was an increase from 3,508 to 4,280 homeless youth. This study also concluded that homeless youth in Victoria dropped from 4,663 in 2001 to 3,896 in 2006. For a more reliable grasp on youth homelessness, the Australian Bureau of Statistics put forward a media release in 2011 to encourage couch surfers to participate in the census. The release puts forward some ways in which people may be living and states how they should identify this on the census. By stating that this issue is like hide and seek, finding the exact amount of youth that are homeless will better benefit those who are sleeping it rough.
Homeless youths living around Australia face significant disadvantage, which has a profound impact on their quality of life. Many homeless youths have had disadvantaged upbringings stemming from family breakdowns, which also leads to a lack of education and understanding of the world. Having these negative experiences around them growing up impacts on their well-being greatly. They can struggle with confidence and have limitations in knowledge through lack of strong adult role models and limited schooling. According to Fry 2007, having these inequalities, homeless youths struggle to support themselves, find work and stay in work. They have limited knowledge on finding services to help support them and better their situation, ultimately leading to poverty. Drug dependency among homeless youths can make it harder for them to break out of poverty. According to Tesson et al. 2003, many homeless youths get involved with drug taking by being in an environment where it is widely available and end up using drugs as a way of escape from the stress and depression of homelessness. Unfortunately, according to Rosenthal et al. 2008, this just exacerbates the problem. By using the limited resources they have to acquire drugs and use their time using and seeking out drugs, instead of seeking out necessities to help improve their quality of life. They also have an increased risk of harmful health outcomes as a result of drug consumption.
25%, or 1 in 4 young Australians aged 16 to 24 are struggling with mental illness, most commonly experiencing depression or severe anxiety. This can cause a young person to completely disengage with their schooling or employment. Mental illness can leave a young person without the well-being to perform as a functioning member of society. There are many systems that have been put in place by the Australian government to reduce the effects of mental illness, but many of them cause more harm to the mental health and well-being of young Australians than they do good. Mental health expert John Mendoza argues that, in Australia, a dog hit by a car gets a better standard of care than what a young person suffering from mental illness would get. We see many of them refuse treatment or even a bed in a hospital where they can be monitored and directed towards appropriate care. Without a highly positive and supportive home environment with devoted, caring family members, the lack of access to effective professional care and treatment can see them unable to continue schooling or work, and in turn may leave them homeless. Many government policies put forth to aid in decreasing youth unemployment and homelessness do not take into account the circumstance of the individual. Movements that encourage youth to more actively seek employment and education, such as Work for the Dole, often discriminate against youth who are struggling with a mental illness. These illnesses make it especially hard for one to remain engaged in their schooling or to find and hold down a job, which can in turn render it impossible to obtain their own housing and remain above the poverty line. Depending on the situation at home for youth struggling with mental illness and whether there are effective support systems put in place or family members who are able to support them, a mental illness can see a young Australian being forced into homelessness. The Committee for Economic Development of Australia argue that government funding and the way they target their budget plays a key role in how effectively mental illness can be prevented and treated for young Australians. They propose that the Australian government, in its actions to provide treatment and therapy for the youth struggling with mental illness, shift their focus from the hospitalisation of those with a mental illness to a more extended and intimate period of home treatment. CEDA contends that this is a longer-lasting treatment and is a more beneficial use of funds. However, many young Australians do not have the appropriate housing or a positive home environment to facilitate this type of therapy. Kids Undercover supports young Australians who are experiencing homelessness, providing them with temporary housing, which gives them greater opportunities to receive effective treatment for mental illness. The temporary housing provided by Kids Undercover also puts young Australians in a stable and supportive home environment, which encourages them to get an education and sets them up with hope of a brighter future, lowering the risk of future mental health issues and actively assisting them in the process of breaking the poverty cycle. The experience of homelessness itself for any youth will take its toll on their mental well-being, as we see 50 to 75% of homeless youth in Australia experience mental illness. Being homeless can worsen existing mental health issues, or even contribute to the onset of depression or anxiety or other mental illnesses. Counselling for homeless youth is a great resource that can provide a great deal of help for those dealing with mental health issues while experiencing homelessness, as it acts as a method of intervention. Guidance by a professional counsellor can not only improve the mental health and well-being of homeless Australians with mental illness, but can also provide a pathway to education or employment and a sense of stability and support while doing so.
Children are often considered to be ones that are hit hardest by poverty. Stewart, Ringgold, Orenstein, and Wilkins, 2006. And the trauma caused is likely to cause damage on both their minds and their bodies. These children who grow up in poverty will be likely to pass the same trauma on to their children. According to the Australian Council of Social Service, ACOS, 17.7% of all children in Australia are currently living below the poverty line, which is considered approximately 50% of the median income. acos.org.au, 2015. Naturally, people who are living in a state of poverty typically are deprived in regards to opportunity and choices. Things like education, resources, food, or other basic human necessities become limited as a result of lack of income, usually as a result of underemployment or unemployment. Creating this theory of the poverty cycle, a child will grow up with a lack of education, leading to either underemployment or unemployment, pushing them below the poverty line, as their wages are too low to sustain their basic human needs. Without any external intervention, this cycle is very likely to continue. Centrelink, formerly known as Social Security, have very few options for homeless youth. However, they can provide some assistance. Centrelink provide fortnightly payments to those who meet the following criteria: are 16 to 21 years old and are looking for work, 18 to 24-year-olds who are full-time students, those that are 16 to 24-year-old and undertaking a full-time apprenticeship, and those that are 16 to 17 who have finished year 12 or equivalent, are full-time studying and need to live away from home or are considered independent. There are some complications that may arise. You become ineligible for Centrelink payments if you are or have been legally married or are in a registered relationship, can show that you have supported yourself through employment, are living in a de facto relationship with another person as a member of a couple for at least 12 months, have or have had a dependent child, have a parental capacity to work as determined by a job capacity assessment, are unable to live at home, have parents who cannot exercise their responsibilities, are a refugee without parents who are living in Australia, are an orphan and have not been legally adopted, or are in state care or only stopped being in state care because of your age. Many homeless youths, in the eyes of the government, may be considered as being dependent or able to live at home, which means that they are unable to claim Centrelink if their parents earned over the maximum income.